It's a great honour to be here. Great generosity of spirit to ask somebody who's not an academic and not a politician. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm going to take a rather different perspective, and I warn you I'm going to be quite challenging, and I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. So the phrase post-truth politics makes me uncomfortable. It has an arrogant, self-righteous feel to it. The implication is that the decent Remainer or Hillary supporter has access to a truth that the ignorant Leaver or Trump voter does not. You might say it's obvious where the truth lies, but the term post-truth makes it more difficult to listen to others. It elevates statistics over feeling, raises evidence, so easy to spin, over conviction. And it uses and abuses language of rights to obscure what is right. In this climate, how on earth are we going to build a common life together? In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to explore how our relationships have become so impoverished that we cannot hear each other, and outline some stepping stones that might take us to a better place. I'll suggest that people across the churches are well placed to be part of the solution, and I'll share a little of what I've learned since starting Together for the Common Good. So where better to start than with Ephesians chapter 4:25. Tell each other the truth, because we all belong to each other in the same body. In these times, God seems determined that we should tell one another the truth and dissolve our self-deceptions about the kind of world we've allowed to develop. A time of geopolitical turbulence offers us an opportunity for honesty, for each of us to make an examination of conscience, investigate what models of human identity we've been working with, and to listen to those whose experiences are different from ours. Whether we like it or not, we all belong to each other. Now, for some of us, Brexit and Trump were not surprising. They are symptoms of our broken body, of a weakening of our democracy. For too long, a progressive agenda has held communities with traditional views in contempt. They've been ridiculed and ignored, feel patronised and insulted. And when people from proud, inherited cultures experience humiliation and powerlessness, they will eventually respond. The Remain and Clinton campaigns were predicated on economics. Indeed, the same liberal economic model that's been dominant for years. This is why their offer was meaningless for those who were left behind. For them, more of the same was the last thing they wanted. They wanted something more meaningful. Having been overlooked for so long, when a rare opportunity came to be heard, they took it, even if they knew the campaigns and protagonists were deeply flawed. They were tired of being served up statistics by a remote technocratic elite, sick of being offered choices between being a few pounds worse or better off. They were suspicious of the truth which never rang true to them, while their infrastructure was in a state of degradation and the dignity that work can offer was fast becoming a memory. They lost patience as social norms were changed without their consent, as the liberal agenda turned away from their concerns and its bland, smooth language, truthiness, if you like, became more and more dominant. They felt exiled in their own country. The pollsters and the media missed what was happening. They were blind to this because this basket of deplorables had been shamed into hiding their views. How could the media, including the BBC, be so incapable of seeing an alternative outcome? Why would it only tell the story that confirmed its own view? Not so easy to get to the truth when large sections of society are silenced. No wonder a rough, sensationalist reality TV vernacular broke through the political permafrost. The wavelength of genuine anger felt authentic. The medium was the message, even if the ideas were outlandish and brutish. People felt what they have been living through was being noticed. So we're now seeing the consequences of a self-righteous brand of liberalism. With hindsight, these seismic democratic gestures seem an inevitable response. Could it be true that a focus on diversity has distracted us from economic inequality? Could it be true that the free movement of people has been in the interests of big business, commodifying labour, keeping wages low, running roughshod over the fragility of local cultures, sucking the brightest and best from their place of belonging, adding further strength to the dynamic metropolitan centres, but also entrenching communities of the left behind? Could it be true that the EU's founding principle of subsidiarity has been allowed to drift? Could it be true that the culture of political correctness has made people afraid to speak the truth? Could it be true that the liberal opinion has gone a bit too far and alienated people with traditional views to the extent that they feel estranged from their own country? Professor Arlie Hochschild of Berkeley has researched what she calls a deep story that captures how people who have been overlooked felt as globalization took hold. A deep story is how life feels, what feels true. I paraphrase. You're waiting in a queue, like in a pilgrimage, and you're facing up a hill at the top of which is your aspiration. You've been waiting there for a long time. Your feet are tired. You've tremendous sense of deserving. You've done everything right, followed the rules, worked hard, but the queue is not moving. And then you begin to see some people cutting in ahead of you. Who are they? Well, they're people from other countries who now have access to jobs that traditionally were reserved for your neighbours and relatives. Not only that, but you can see ahead of you women who now have access to jobs that used to typically be for men. Even the rights of the hunted fox gets attention before you. And then you see Cameron, Blair, Obama, Clinton in this deep story, beckoning to the queue jumpers. In fact, they're sponsoring them. Aren't they queue jumpers too? How did they get to Harvard, Oxford, Columbia? How did they get to be leaders in politics, media, finance, intellectual life? Something feels rigged here. And so the very idea of government came to seem like an instrument of your own marginalisation. Then in this deep story, someone who is ahead of you in the queue turns around and says, "You bigots, you backward rednecks." Some of Hochschild's colleagues scorned her approach. "You better watch out and not empathise too much, it might change you." As if listening to another perspective could infect your orthodoxy. Actually, this is how we get closer to the truth. And this mocking attitude betrays exactly why we are where we are now. So now that the fragmented and unequal and divided reality is laid bare, even if some still refuse to face it, we need to work out what we can do to build back the broken body. And before judging the political class or anybody else, we should start with our own examination of conscience. We should ask if, in the churches, there has been a tendency to rank the needs of some over others. Let me tell you about Anne-Marie, who I know through my friend Kathy. Anne-Marie lives with her 4 children on a rundown estate. She used to spend most of her time in her flat watching TV, going out only to get the kids from school. She said she didn't have confidence, and anyway, there was nothing to do around where she lives. She felt the church people she'd come across were more interested in campaigning about justice or raising money for overseas charities than in people like her right on their doorstep. This is how Anne-Marie experienced the church. Let me be blunt. We have in the church been swept along, some of us, by liberal received wisdom and inadvertently perhaps focused more on the needs and interests of the destitute or of refugees or of migrants or other minority groups and overlooked the interests of the struggling white working class families in our own neighbourhood. Could that be true? Faith in the City, the Church of England's commission published over a generation ago, spoke truth to power and focused on communities of the left behind. It said, and I quote, "Poverty is not only about shortage of money. It's about relationships, about how people are treated, how they regard themselves, about powerlessness, exclusion, and loss of dignity. But if speaking truth to power becomes a way of avoiding personal relationships with people who are excluded, then we might as well all pack up and go home." 30 years on from Faith in the City, Philip North, Bishop of Burnley, says, quote, "We are hooked on an outdated temple model, thinking we are doing good by shouting at government from on high, rather than seeking locally based solutions. I am sick and tired of hearing pompous tosh about the church's prophetic voice or the church in the public square, whilst at the same time we are busy abandoning the people we purport to represent." Unquote. We hear a lot about giving a voice to the voiceless, less about giving them the space and support to speak for themselves. Well, they have spoken. Social justice was originally thought of as people's belonging and their duties to each other. Has our notion of justice become so thin that it comes down to handing out bits of money? In any case, what and who do we mean by the poor? In Pope Francis's theological tradition, sometimes called the theology of the people, the term poor refers to people who live with the experience of non-power. This can be economic, but also social, material, relational, educational, spiritual. Someone who's living with the experience of non-power has a sense of their need for other human beings, the awareness of needing others, the opposite of individualism. That is a very profound truth and a beautiful thing, which is why Francis says the church must be not only for the poor, but of the poor. He says, if the Holy Spirit is set free among the poor, this is how the church itself will be transformed. Vulnerability and humility are qualities to be treasured. These are qualities often found in people who are excluded and ignored. Estranged from those who experience non-power, we are all impoverished, less human. Ignoring their interests is to exclude the possibility of what they have to contribute. But people who are poor don't always fit into a neat category, and not all appear to be deserving. The traditions, opinions, and cultures of some people who are poor may be out of kilter with mainstream liberal norms. Can the church welcome everyone who is experiencing non-power? Even people from UKIP, or those with tattoos, or fighting dogs? Or will it prioritise minority groups, refugees, and the destitute? A truly common good approach would recognise that there are people across many groups, ethnic and social, who experience non-power. The common good offers a methodology to balance these interests, not to rank them. It's not a zero-sum game. Jean Vanier understands that to be fully human, we need to be in a relationship with the excluded, no matter how difficult that may be. Who are we called to love? Jean's experience has taught him that humiliation can lead to anger and to violence. He talks about the gift of the poor. He says it is often they who are free enough to see with the greatest clarity the needs, beauty, and pain of the community. Those with no power may well be angry. And given how many people now feel powerless, that's a lot of people. But making the majority feel like a threatened minority is now having very dangerous consequences. Whether we like it or not, we are all members of one body. The major theme of that letter to the Ephesians is the unity and reconciliation of the whole of creation through the agency of the church. The challenge of St. Paul brings with it the potential for the healing of that broken body into convergence with the mission of the church. This moment of political turmoil is also an opportunity. A new politics is being formed. And if it's not founded on a relationship and respect for the poor, then we are destined for a sterile internal conversation, and the mission will fail. And our democracy will remain in crisis. This is why we believe the common good is an idea whose time has come. So we all think we know what it means. The common good resonates from Aristotle to Ubuntu, Shalom, across humanist, Jewish, Christian and other traditions. We draw from across all the Judeo-Christian traditions, and in particular from Catholic social teaching. So the classic definition goes, the common good is the set of conditions in which every individual in the community can flourish. Yes, but what is missed by the liberal left and the libertarian right is that the common good is not a utopian ideal to be imposed by one enlightened group upon another. It's about a balance of interests. I cannot create the common good on my own, and neither can you. I can't create it just by talking with my friends or with my own special interest group. It's a kind of alchemy. It requires unlikely partnerships. And it's how that set of conditions is created that is the crucial question. The conditions need to be built by us, working together across our differences. To build a common good requires people who may seriously disagree and whose interests and circumstances are different, to tell each other the truth, to encounter each other in relationship, to negotiate a balance of interests. Simply put, it is in my interests that you thrive. It's no easy task. To build a common good, you need to apply all the principles of Catholic social teaching. So we talk about the practice of common good. The great strength of Catholic social teaching is its maturity. It rejects ideology, both individualist and collectivist. Both big business and big government tend to dehumanize. CST offers a constructive process of discernment, not a protest narrative. Its principles, human dignity, the dignity of work, the common good, equality, respect for life, reconciliation, subsidiarity, solidarity, participation, association, and the preferential option for the poor, and the importance of intermediate institutions. These principles are universal. It makes for a powerful recipe for building a common life. But outside the Catholic Church, it's little known. Even within the Church, it's poorly understood. While this is the case, its energy cannot be released. And it'll only secure the credibility that it's due if it's clearly understood to transcend party politics. We want it to be more accessible and to get it out of the academy. So in an ecumenical and broader context, we talk about Catholic social teaching as common good thinking. And at entry level, we use the broad headings of the common good, the person, relationship, stewardship, and everyone is included, no one is left behind. We want to see it more widely applied from the grassroots to the boardroom. Our inspiration for this comes from an unlikely partnership. So Together for the Common Good started as an idea in 2011. I thought in the context of increasing social division that the partnership between my late father, Bishop David Sheppard, and Archbishop Derek Warlock might still have currency, not just for church leaders, but now for all of us. They learned from each other, realizing that each had different gifts to bring. Gifts like Catholic social teaching, the See, Judge, Act methodology, the Anglican hospitality to the whole community, courage, and negotiating skills. For 20 years, they worked together across their differences, putting the city of Liverpool first in a time of polarisation and division. If they could do it, so can we. They encouraged local leadership among communities of the left behind, built bridges between mutually suspicious groups, listening to all sides and interpreting between them, business, unions, Catholic and Protestant, the affluent, the left behind, the police, the black community, the militant tendency, the Thatcher government. Their method for building the common good was reconciliation. So today, those who stay tribal, contemptuous or self-righteous, politically, religiously, or culturally, will be poorly prepared. The goal of totalitarianism, as Orwell says, is to destroy our common basis of agreement. A shared sense of the truth will be found within reconciled relationships. So we want people of goodwill to work together across their beliefs and political differences for the common good. So the common good, the work of Together for the Common Good involves acting as a catalyst, being firmly non-partisan and ecumenical, building relationships, promoting common good thinking and practice, encouraging common good conversations, assisting others, incubating ideas, developing resources and publications, holding public debates, sharing information via our website and our newsletter, which now goes to several thousand subscribers. With only a tiny core team, we punch above our weight, thanks to many pro bono associates, partnerships, and alliances. And following the Sheppard-Warlock tradition, we want to see relationships of shared purpose flourish between the many different and estranged Christian traditions and with other faith communities and non-religious organisations too. We want a generous, outward-facing church, releasing the potential of the laity, equipped with the civic capacity to empower communities. So, we've had Brexit, then Trump, symptoms of a realignment still unfolding, and we anticipate more coming down the track. The old left and right orthodoxies are shifting. This is a challenge to take the people seriously. Everything is changing super fast, and we need to be ready. Reconciliation is very important now. This is too big a task for politicians. If we're to heal this broken body, everyone of goodwill will be needed. As Justin Welby says, the truth is complex. In a recent address, he said, and I quote, "At this point, we cannot tell that the rebirth of the nation-state is a good or a bad thing. If it is a reality, then it is one that we must put to good use. If we allow our national and international political context to define our values and virtues, then we will be disappointed. Values emerge from histories of interaction and are rooted in stories of virtue, above all in Europe, the stories of the Judeo-Christian tradition." Unquote. What is needed is a people capable of listening and capable of telling the truth, with a narrative deeper and more mature than the story shaped by the politics of our day. So what will it take to be such a people? Well, one thing's for sure. If we're not looking for common ground, we're not going to find it. That's why I shared that deep story with you earlier. Hochschild has that reconciliatory instinct I'm talking about. She is a left-winger who had the humility and curiosity to get to know intentionally right-wingers who she thought she had nothing in common with. She found that empathy bridged the divide. They had quite a bit of common ground. Indeed, she found the experience enlarging and enriching, in spite of the scorn of her colleagues. The churches and their people are well placed to do this too, to foster a culture of encounter. But often they don't understand what's going on or are confused by misinformation. They lack civic capacity. This is why Together for the Common Good exists. We encourage people to get out of their silos and build relationships across local institutions and between estranged groups, beyond party loyalties. Those of us in the metropolitan bubble should get out more. We should listen to those who've been overlooked for so long and get to know them. We need to make the effort and have the courage to listen to unfamiliar voices. And that includes the likes of Breitbart, Trump's advisors like Steve Bannon, and UKIP people. We do well to understand, too, how social media algorithms drive us into deeper niches and dangerously make interaction less likely with people different from ourselves. Not easy to have a shared sense of truth in the echo chamber era, unless we actively subvert it. Can we be the ones with the courage who are prepared to stay in the room, negotiate, and keep the dialogue going, recognizing the humanity in everyone, affirming the legitimacy of what they have to say? At the end of this year of mercy, what have we learned? What sociologists call empathy, we know as love or mercy. It can be a very effective tool for entering a different worldview, at the bottom of which are human feelings. We are called to heal the broken body, to stand in the fractures. Do you know that feeling of being totally forgiven? Totally loved by God? That is what the church is meant to do, through us, to convey that feeling, especially to the hard to love, not just our favourite people. This is the kind of church Pope Francis has been asking us to be since Evangelii Gaudium. This is the kind of outward-facing church Sheppard and Warlock embodied a generation ago. They were effective, honest brokers between mutually suspicious and hostile groups, allowing people to speak. There was no politically correct silencing going on there. They were branded as statist by the Thatcherite right and as traitors by the hard left. They worked with business, encouraging their crucial role for the common good. They empowered local leadership in communities of the left behind, affirming their cultures. They worked alongside people, not doing to, but working with, building up their capacity. They were responsive to context, not obsessed by the church or by politics, but more concerned with the reality of human life. And they were not socialists, but radical traditionalists for whom poverty and exclusion was an affront to the body politic. They resisted being sidelined by doctrinal differences, but loyal to their own traditions. No syncretism there. Their partnership demonstrated they were not in it for self-aggrandizement or institutional self-interest. They rolled up their sleeves and, as Pope Francis says, enjoyed smelling like sheep. This is some of what it might take to be such a people. So looking across the silos, we can see that instinct to build a common life is present among Christians of many traditions. And I'm not being exclusive here. Of course, it's true across other traditions too, but my concern is particularly around the churches. People with this instinct are in the hard-to-reach areas that others gave up on a long time ago. So for them, Brexit and Trump were not a surprise. They are in the outer estates, the abandoned towns, choosing to stay and build the kingdom with communities of the left behind, embedded, raising their kids and choosing not to leave when promotion or metropolitan temptations beckon. Such a people understand the importance of working alongside rather than speaking for the poor, moving from handouts to a hand up, reorienting the church to face outwards, repurposing church land and buildings to provide affordable housing and community land trusts and space for local startups. We can see it also in the thousands doing the unglamorous work in food banks, debt counselling. They know people in the struggling communities personally. But that reconciliatory instinct can go much further and address structural injustice too. We can see it at work in those who sustain the intermediate institutions, the local clubs and associations, and build the bonds between them. We can see it at work in those who are active in reshaping the economy through financial inclusion, credit union networks, cleaning supply chains, in the ethical investment firms and the fast-growing impact investment sector. They are showing it's possible to make the market work for social good by participation. They are the entrepreneurs driving the mission-led business agenda, proving it's possible to be successful and create jobs as well as honouring the dignity of their workforce. We can see those bravely challenging managerialism and overregulation in the social care sector. We can see it also in those who are turning whole networks of failing schools around and cultivating the leadership of young people in challenging neighbourhoods. We can see it in those making interventions in the higher education system, which has so dishonoured the poor and driven a division between the educated and the uneducated. And in those courageously telling the truth, challenging the tyranny of identity politics in universities. And we can see that reconciling instinct too in those working to overcome the blight of loneliness and bringing tenderness and kindness into systems that have lost their soul. In all the examples that I've given, Christians of different denominations are leading the way, working with other faith communities and those of no faith. This is why I say that such a people can be found across the churches and why they're well placed to be part of the solution. This is what I mean by agents of change for the common good. A role for everyone, not just the activists. It's not party political, and it's a positive narrative. Our values of love, hope, responsibility, human dignity, family, community, relationships, and rootedness in place are sorely needed now. The political landscape is changing hour by hour, but our tradition doesn't change. It's mature. It transcends left and right. It's radically inclusive. We can help to create the conditions in which a new politics of the common good can grow. What will the church be known for? Rituals or relationships? I'm not advocating a triumphalist Christianity. The common good is not showy. The Trinity is our centre of gravity and our model. Each of us is invited to enter into a relationship with the Father, with Jesus Christ, and with the Holy Spirit. Being part of this is what makes us human. God needs us to participate according to our vocation in his great creative plan. We can begin by telling each other the truth. We know we are all one body, whether we like it or not. It's our job to be such a people, to be a people capable of showing how humanity can recover a proper view of the human person, not through the lens of money or unfettered personal liberalism, nor through the extremist political positioning, nor through a dehumanizing lens of technocratic efficiency, but through one human person's relations with another. Thank you.